So let's move on to a new shape we're going to find the volume of, and that shape is the cylinder. I am recording this during the summertime. This is the beginning of July, and so the cylinder I'm seeing a lot of right now is the ice cream cone. It's actually about 90 degrees outside right now, so an ice cream cone sounds wonderful at the moment. The formula that we need to know for a cone is actually very similar to the formula that we used for a cylinder, which makes a lot of sense because the base or the bottom of a cone is the same shape as the bottom of a cylinder. It is a circle. And in fact, the volume of a cone includes pi r squared, just like the volume of a cylinder did. The volume of a cone also gets multiplied by the height because the height matters. A short cone is going to have a smaller volume than a tall cone if they have the same base. So we multiply by the height because that matters too. So far the formula looks exactly the same as that of a cylinder. There's going to be a difference, obviously, because a cone tapers up to that point at the top and a cylinder does not. And the way we account for that tapering up at the top is that once we have this pi r squared times h, we take that pi r squared times h, just like a cylinder, and we multiply the entire thing by 1/3. Or if you like, you can think of it as dividing by 3. So it's the volume of a cylinder times 1/3, or the volume of a cylinder divided by 3. That's how we find the volume of a cone. Cylinder divided by 3, or cylinder times 1/3. Everything else is exactly the same. We just need to know two numbers. What is the radius of the cone? What is the height of the cone? And then what are we going to use for pi? Are we going to use the pi button? Are we going to use 3.14? Are we going to use 3.14159? Are we going to use 22 sevenths? Almost every single time we use 3.14. And in fact, when we read this problem, we can see right up there in the very last sentence, it says use 3.14 for pi. It also gives us another important piece of information. It says round your answers to the nearest tenth. So since we're using pi 3.14, we're going to get decimals for our answers. And when we get a decimal, we just need to make sure before we circle and say, here's the answer, that we round our answer to the nearest tenth place. Okay, so the first one's pretty simple because it says, hey, here's the height, it's 8, and hey, here's the radius, it's 2. That's handy. All we gotta do is just plug in some numbers. So let's do volume equals 1/3, and then we'll do pi, which is 3.14, times the radius, which is 2, squared, times the height, which is 8. Great, and then we're just going to come over and do this on the calculator. So I'm gonna do the 3.14 times 2 squared times 8 and get an answer. And then I'm gonna divide that answer by 3, just because sometimes trying to do 1/3 when I'm not using a TI-84. If you have a TI-84, it's really easy to do this all at once because the TI-84 will let you actually put in a fraction. This calculator, to do a fraction, I would have to do parentheses numerator divided by denominator. And I don't want to risk making a mistake trying to do anything fancy like that. So I'm just going to do anything fancy like using parentheses and division. I'm going to I'm going to do just this part. This is what I would do if this was a cylinder. I would do pi r squared times the height. So if this was a cylinder, it'd be 100.48. A cone is always going to be smaller than a cylinder with the same measurements because it's always 1/3 as much. So this is going to be 1/3 times 100.48. So you can either type in 1/3 times 100.48, or you could do 100.48 divided by 3. And hey, what do you know? It's 24. Well, I guess I didn't need to round that to the nearest tenth. Came out to be a really nice number because when you do 100.48 divided by 3, the decimals disappear. Oh, did I do that right? I don't think I did do that right. That doesn't make sense, does it? 0.48 divided by 3 should... I think I just messed up on the calculator. I did mess up on the calculator. Whew, almost made a boo-boo. Glad I caught that. 0.48 divided by 3 does not come out nicely. 33.49 approximately. And so when I round that to the nearest tenth, oops, no, not you. When I round that, I get 33.5. My unit is inches. And since this is volume, the units are cubed, inches cubed. Okay. No, 100.48 divided by 3 is not 24, kids. Put that in your notes. 33.5 cubic inches is the volume here. Worth noting that a cone and a cylinder that have the same measurements, the cone is always going to have a smaller volume. Cone volume will always be smaller than a cylinder volume if they have the same radius and height. Cone's always going to be 1/3 as big, or 1/3 as voluminous. Okay, this one almost gives us the two measurements that we need. It gives us the height, which is nice, but it does not give us the radius flat out. It gives us the diameter of 8. See how the line goes all the way across? So we need to find the radius, which is pretty simple. You just do diameter divided by 2. So radius is 4. Great. So volume equals pi r squared times the height. This is what I would do if it was a cylinder, but because this is a cone, it's going to be 1/3 as big. Last time I put the 1/3 in front, I did 1/3 times the whole thing, but it's also completely fine to write it as the whole thing divided by 3. That's totally fine too. I'm not going to do it this way, but if you're looking and thinking to yourself, could I just do like 9 divided by 3 and just like cancel that out and write it as, I'm going to just write this, could I do this? If you're seeing that we can do some simplification and write it like that, if you're seeing that, absolutely, you can do it that way. That's totally fine. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to use the formula the way it's written. But if you're seeing that simplification, good for you. You absolutely can do it that way. I'm going to do it the way I did the last one. I'm going to do 3.14 times 4 squared times 9. So if this was a cylinder, it would be 452.16, but cones are smaller. They're 1/3 as big. So I'm going to divide this by 3. Make sure I actually put it in correctly this time. There we go. So it's approximately 150.72, and I'm going to round this to the nearest tenth as the problem requested. So 150.7. These measurements were all in feet, so it's going to be cubic feet. I know my type A people are probably, it's driving you nuts that I wrote the first answer in blue and I'm writing this answer in black. I'm so sorry that I wrote this one in black and the first one in blue. Sorry, type A people. So 150.7 is going to be the volume of this cone, 150.7 cubic feet.